Okay, so in today's video, I'm going to show you how are we going to optimize our code, both in our API and also with our Dart code. Okay, but first I'm going to show you on how are we going to optimize our API. So as you can see here, we have our files that we have, or the API endpoints that we have discussed in our previous videos. Okay. So there are a lot of files that you could see here, and as we go along there could be more files that we are going to deal with. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how are we going to lessen the files that we are going to use into our API. So for example, for the users we have here the register and the login.php, wherein the login.php is the one in charge for the login, and register is for the registration of users. Okay, so instead that we are going to deal with two files or more as we are going to go along, we are going to create a single file that is going to handle all operations for the user. Then for the contacts, we are also going to create a single file, a single endpoint that is going to handle all operations for the contacts. Okay, but we're going to go first with our users. Okay, so I have created here users.php. Okay, so instead that we are going to deal with login and register, we are going to use only users.php, because take note, going back, the login and register are actually both deals with the users. Okay, so we have here our users.php. So how are we going to handle different operations into a single file? So we could create that, or we could actually have that, do that through a class. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a class. I'm just going to call it user. Okay, and inside our class we are going to have two functions. As of now, two functions, one for the login and the other function for register. Okay, so when a client is going to call this API endpoint, so the client must have to specify what is the operation it is going to undertake. Would it be login or register? And if ever it is login, so we are going to call the function login. So I'm just going to have here function, then login, and the other one is for the register, function, then register. Okay, so these are the two methods that are going to take care of the operations for login.php and register.php. Okay, so that's the purpose of the class that we have created here. Okay, so next is, as I've said, when are we going to call the login and when are we going to call register? So that is going to depend on the operation that is going to be submitted by the user. Okay, so take note, to be submitted by the client would be operation and the JSON data. Okay, so we have here the two variables that must be coming from our clients, so that when the operation is login, so it is going to call login, and if ever register, it is going to call register. But take note also, in our login.php we're using here the method get, while in our register we're using here the method post. Okay, now there are two methods used by our clients to access login and register. But now take note that we are going to use only a single file that is going to accommodate those two methods. So how are we going to know what method has been used by the user or by the client? Okay, So in this tutorial that we're going to have, I'm just going to concentrate on the post and the get. Okay? So here is we are going to validate. Okay? We are going to validate if a server variable, okay, the request method is equal to, okay, we're going to have first get. Anyway, post or get, that would be fine. Okay. Then we could have else if, then I'm just going to copy. Or anyway, as I've said, we could just have else, but I'm just going to have else if, okay, so that in preparation for the other methods, example, delete and put. Okay, so if the request method is get, okay, so we are going to get this one here, okay, and we're going to get also this if ever it is post. Okay, but then as I've said, we are going to have only the operation and the JSON. So what are we going to do here would be these three parameters or variables, we are going to have this one into a JSON string. Okay, we're going to put this on, we are going to encode from the client, we are going to encode this one into a JSON string so that when it reach our users that PHP, our single file endpoint, so it is going to treat the JSON string as our data to be used for the different functions. Okay, then how are we going to know if the client wants to have a login or a register? So we're just going to agree we are going to use a variable named operation. Okay, so here I'm going to have operation if ever it is a get, so we're going to use the super global get, then from the client we are going to expect for an operation parameter. Okay, and the other one is we're going to have JSON or the data. This is actually our data. Okay, so what are the parameters we are going to expect from our clients? Only operation and the JSON. Okay, so if ever it is a post, okay, so I'm just going to have here post. Actually, there's another way in how are you to do this one, but we are just going to have first the procedure that we have already discussed. So if ever it is get, we are going to get it, but if ever it is a post, so we're going to have post. Okay, so we have now extracted, okay, the values of the parameters passed from our client. So the next thing that we're going to do is now to redirect the control to each of the functions here. First, we are going to create an object, okay, of the class that we have created here. Okay, so we have now created a new class. Okay, then we are going to validate what is the operation intended by the client. Okay, so whatever would be the value of the operation here, it could be either get or the post. Okay, so as of now we have only two values. It could be login or register. Okay, so we're going to have here case, then we have login, then we are going to call login. Okay, so here how are you going to call, since we are going to return something into the into or whatever is the calling client, okay, it could be Dart or it could be Flutter, it could be JS or whatever. Okay, so we are going to display. So take note, in PHP we're going to have echo as for our display. Okay, but then we are going to call our method named login, and we are going to pass whatever would be the value or the data being submitted, okay, in the form of our variable or parameter we have JSON. Then we're going to have here the break. Okay, so if ever login, then it is going to call login, and it's going to pass, in our case, the username and the password. It is contained into our JSON variable. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have also a variable named JSON, so that whatever would be the value of the JSON here, this is going to be passed into the JSON here. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, okay, from here until the last. Okay, this is our login. Okay, so into our login function, so I just take note, I just copied the code that we have discussed in our previous video. So first, instead of going to have here echo, since we have already here the command echo, okay, so we are just going to return whatever would be the value of this one here. Okay, then instead that we are going to have the username and password, okay, so take note, we are going to deal with only the JSON string. Okay, so there's no need for our super global get in our login method. Okay, so we're going to work only with our JSON. Okay, so instead we're going to have the username that we have extracted before here, I'm going to have JSON then with the username. Okay, and another one here, JSON, and we have here. Okay, so it is now an array. Okay, JSON is now an array here, but take note that JSON is actually a string. Okay, so what are we going to do here so that we could use the syntax here is we are going to convert our JSON into an array. Okay, so how are we going to convert JSON or a string into an array? So I'm just still going to name it JSON. Okay, JSON decode. Okay, so we're going to use JSON decode, meaning it is going to convert the string into an array. Okay, true means we are going to use an associative array, so that instead that we're going to have an integer, example JSON 0 or JSON 1, so we're just going to use the name of the parameter. So this is now the purpose of the boolean value true on the second parameter here. Okay, login. Okay, so I guess that's enough. Okay, so we're going to try it later. So next that we're going to modify is actually our Dart. Okay, our Dart code. Okay, so here we have here our main. Okay, so this is our previous code. Okay, so we have our query parameters and we have submitted our username and password. So that is why we have here in our login we have the username and password. But take note here that in our users.php we are now going to have or require only our clients with operation and the JSON parameter. Okay, so that is why here in our main.dart, okay, so we need to have only our operation and our JSON. Okay, so what is the operation that we are going to have? We have login. Okay, and then what should be our value here? Okay, so we could actually directly have the JSON data here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to define our JSON data before our query parameters. Okay, so I'm just going to call it JSON data. Okay, and for our JSON data is we're going to have, okay, going back. Okay, the JSON data should be, we have the username and password. Take note, this is our JSON data. So therefore, we are going to define our JSON data username and password. Okay, and for our username is we're going to have the username controller.text, and for the password is we're going to have password controller.text. Okay, so this one here defined our JSON data. Okay, and here we're going to have our JSON data. Okay, so therefore we are going to send JSON data into our as the value for the JSON parameter. Okay, but take note here that we have still the JSON data as dynamic or a map. Okay, so what are we going to do here is we're going to convert our JSON data into a JSON string. Okay, so that we could send it as our query parameter later on. Okay, so how are we going to convert an array or a map into JSON string? So we have JSON encode. Okay, so take note here that the only thing that have changed into our Dart file is we have defined our JSON data as part of or value of the JSON parameter and an operation parameter that is going to determine which function is going to be called by our API later on. Okay, I guess that's it. So we're going to try. So reload. I'm going to have the usual ptalk, then 1 2 3 4 5 login. Oops, there's a problem. It is not a valid JSON. So now, one way to test, or one way to try, one way to know, to determine what is our problem here is, actually, if ever we are going to have this one, BR and so on, we have a problem into our API. By the way, here's the problem. The problem here is actually this one. Okay? So, as I have told you a while ago that we are now going to use users.php. But still, we are still using our login.php. So therefore, I'm going to change this one, users.php. So save, reload. And by the way, if ever we could not determine the source of the problem, we could just actually display or print response.body. Okay, so that is going to display here the complete error message. Okay, so we have here ptalk 1 2 3 4 5 login. So we have successfully logged in. Okay. So the only thing that we have changed into our Dart file is actually this area here. Nothing has changed below. And in our API, actually total overhaul. Okay. So next is how are we going to perform our register. Okay. So therefore here we are going to have another case. Okay. I'm going to have it register. Okay, what if the operation is register? So therefore, we're going to call register, and we are going to pass again. We have JSON. And what are those things that we are going to pass? We have username, password, and the full name. Okay, so I'm going to have all of them. I'm going to copy. Then I'm going to paste it into our register function. And instead of trying to have here an echo, so we're going to have return. Then instead that we're going to have those three here, we are going to remove them. Then I'm just going to copy. Okay. So still we are going to decode our JSON so that we could use it here just like in our login. Okay, so we have here JSON. I'm just going to copy. Okay, save. So this is now our register function. By the way, we used to have we're going to set before into return. In our previous discussions, we have set our objects into null. So we're just going to have unset or con, although others claim it is unnecessary. Unset, then our statement. Okay. So it is just actually a good programming practice that we are going to unset, or we are going to clean up our mess. Okay. So if ever that we have here we have created here objects, so therefore before we are going to exit from our function, we are going to remove those objects from the memory of our computer. Okay. Although again, others claim in a way there will be a garbage collector. So, but then as I've said, we are going to clean up our mess. We are not going to wait for the garbage collector to clean up our objects. Okay, so save. Then we are going to modify our register.dart. Okay, again, so instead that we're going to have register.php, so I'm going to have users.php. Then for our data, okay, so again, I'm just going to create here my I'm just going to call this one as my JSON data. Okay. And I'm going to create another one for the operation and the JSON. Okay, I'm just going to call it data. Okay, so then we're going to have our operation. So our operation would be register, and our JSON would be JSON encode. Then we have JSON data. Okay, so if you could observe, if you have just observed the data that we are going to submit, okay, always operation and JSON. So here also we have operation and JSON. Okay, and we have also our JSON data, what could be then the value for our JSON parameter. Also here we have our JSON data. Okay, these are actually the parameters or the values that are going to be manipulated by our functions. Okay, so that is now the value for our JSON parameter. Okay, and here So instead that we're going to have JSON encode there, so we're just going to have our body would be our data. Okay, I guess that's it. Save, then reload. Okay, so I'm going to register, so no account yet, register. Okay, so then I'm going to have Elsa. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then Elsa frozen. Okay. Save. Oops, there's an error again. Okay, let us check. Registration failed. Okay. From our users.php, so we have register, JSON, username, password, full name. Okay, let us try to display here our response. Okay. Okay, I'll just try. Click. On line 35. Okay, we have there undefined variable. Okay, so it's in our PHP. Line 35. Okay, so we have here our problem. Okay, so we have no JSON. Okay, so since from here we have submitted, or we have passed our JSON variable from here, in our case switch statement, so we should also have our register to have a variable. We're just going to call it JSON because we have here, we used also here JSON. Okay, so save, then let's go back. Okay, so let's go back with our Elsa 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then Elsa frozen, then save. Oh, another problem. Line 37. Okay, so we have here unset, and also the other one here we have unset. Okay, it's just a typo error. Okay, so let's try again. Save. Another error. Where is the error? Again on line 35. Oh, duplicate entry Elsa. So actually we have, in our previous error, we have successfully saved the file or the record, but it has a problem on it has successfully saved it here, then the error appears in this area here, so therefore Elsa has been already saved. So I'm just going to change uh, oops. Instead of Elsa, I'm just going to have Elsa01. Okay? Elsa frozen, then save. So you have successfully registered. Okay, so I'm just going to have now Elsa01, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Login. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So we have now successfully registered, and we have checked it through logging in. Okay. So sorry for those typographical errors. Okay. So what has changed into our API? So we are now going to delete or remove login and register, and we have created a single file that is going to manipulate whatever operations for the users. Okay, we name it users.php. So we have created a class, and inside our class we have our two functions for the login and our register. Then we have tested what are the data submitted by the user. We have here operation through the parameters operation and the JSON, and no matter what method has been used by the user, and as I've said, we're just going to concentrate as of this moment for the get and the post. Okay, then based on the operation that has been submitted by the user or by the client, we are going to validate it here. And if ever it is login, so it is going to call the function login. And if ever register, it is going to call the function register. Okay? And in our Dart file, we have added actually this one here. Okay? The JSON data. And our data remains as is, but we have just submitted now only our operation and the JSON parameters. And our JSON data, that is on the data for the JSON parameter. Okay? So if ever that we are going to add some more procedures, for example, display all users, for example. Okay? So what are we going to do? Instead that we're going to create a new file, so we're just going to add a function inside our users. So we're going to have here a function get users. Let us say all users. Okay? Then our code. Okay? And here we're going to validate, we're going to add another one. Case, let us say get users, then we are going to call get users. Okay? So that's the first optimization that we have discussed. So next is we are going to have another discussion on how are we going to still optimize our code into our Dart file by using then data models. Okay, so that's all for this video, and I'll see you on the next one.